Welcome everyone. My name is Nick Roy. I'm on the solutions engineering team here at Silent Push. If you're new to Silent Push, if you haven't used it before, or if you've used it occasionally, you might be familiar with this view. Once you log in, where we can see a couple of different ways we can start working with some of the data we have. The easiest way to get started really truly is just, I have a domain, I have an IP, I want to just look it up. I want to see what comes back. So this was a domain that we were looking at, and we wanted to know more about it and see kind of what else could we pivot on to find other sites that might be related, maybe find some more infrastructure that's associated with this. So starting off simple, just a domain that we have here. If you're new to Silent Push, one of the things you'll see at the top, we have just these DNS records that we're bringing back. We can see we have a couple of them up here. You'll see this PA DNS a lot. We call this passive aggressive DNS. We take a more active approach to how we resolve our DNS data. Instead of relying purely on passive data, we take data from a number of sources and start actively resolving. We re-resolve our entire data set at a minimum of every 24 hours. So the goal really is we want to be more active with the way we're going out and discovering a lot of these domains. And then as I've been talking, one of the other things that's been running, we actually go out and scan these web pages that we're searching. So in this case, if I pull up the screenshot, this was in a phishing email someone had received. Looks actually like a pretty good clone. We see this a lot, a bunch of phishing kits out there, but just based off the domain and based off the screenshot, we can probably pretty quickly tell this is a phishing site. But we'd start to kind of pivot off of this. We found a lot of interesting things as we were kind of going through and investigating this. One of the first things we obviously always check, we have these DNS records down here. As we're kind of going through this, one of the things we can start to see if I look at some of these IPs here, anything in blue is something you can click on. It'll bring up this context menu. You can pivot off of this if you want more details. But if I just want more information about what these IPs are, I can start to see these are both Cloudflare IPs. So the site is fronted by Cloudflare. Maybe not the best pivot that I want to make off of these IPs. And if I look through the rest of the kind of DNS records that we have in here, same kind of thing. I can see more Cloudflare IPs for the Quad A records. Name servers are all Cloudflare. No text records to really pivot off of. So in this case, maybe not a ton I can start to work with in here. But we do have that web scanner running. So we're actually going out, we're scanning these pages. There's about 150 different pieces of metadata that we're going out and collecting. So in this case, this actually gives us a lot of pivots off of this page that we have now. So in this case, we'll start to see a couple of them that we'll use today. One of the really interesting ones is this SHV. So SHV stands for script hash value. We are essentially taking all the JavaScript on a page, we alphabetize it, we drop the version numbers and we hash it. Really good for finding kind of sites like this where maybe it is, just something that's being reused. It's part of a kit. We can find a bunch of other things, that's maybe been spun up a little more automated when they're building some of these sites. So we can use things like that to pivot off of. We do just kind of your classic hash the body of the page, hash the footer of a page. We have fuzzy hashes that we can use as well. So if I want to start to maybe broaden my search a little bit more, we can start to use things like that. And then, really getting into things like Favicon icons, server information. We have information that we're pulling back about certificates on a page. A lot of different data that we can use to start to pivot if we are running into something like this, where we know this is a site, it's fronted by Cloudflare, but we want to find, related infrastructure, things that are similar, whether I want to go hunting or maybe it's just a Tuesday afternoon and I want to just go find some interesting things on the internet. So in this case, though, we have a lot of these hashes, but the one interesting thing that kind of stood out as we were going through this, and we have these Google IDs in here that they left in. This is always an interesting pivot, so we can actually just click on this as well. And same kind of thing. I want to pivot off of this. I want to see, are there any sites out there that have these Google IDs for kind of tracking who's on the site? So I can pivot off of that. I can use the content of the page. I can use the favicons to start doing some of this pivoting. I always think this is a really interesting one. And we can start to see, we have our one domain here that we've been scanning, but we also can find a second one here. We have this TBAO, now we have tblog-fxtb. So we can start to find a couple of other domains this way. We can start to see it has the same favicon, the same title of the page. And really, if I want, what I can do now, I can take these two separate instances, two different domains, these two different IPs, and I hit the checkboxes here on the left. I can go up and I can compare them. In this case, I want to see the similarities because I want to know, are these pretty similar? We know about the Google IDs that are the same in here. We know the favicon is the same. We know they're both fronted by Cloudflare now. See, there's a couple of redirects that's the same. So in this case, starting to find some of this infrastructure that we know is similar. Additionally, these are all things we can use if I want to further kind of refine my query, where if I want to use something other than just the Google IDs, maybe I want to add in some of these favicons or some of these other, kind of attributes in here as part of my query. These are all things that I can use to just sort of add in and start refining what I might be looking for as I'm kind of doing some of this hunting and pivoting. All things that I can easily start adding in if I want to start to refine this down and say, let's add in some additional pieces, whether it's favicons or just information on the body of the page. So we can use a lot of this content to do this searching. So if I come back to my original domain here, so in this case, if I want to use my favicon, this is another easy way where we can start to say, I want to take something like a favicon, and I want to use that as part of my searching. We have people using this for their own sites, just to make sure there's nothing being cloned. But if you're just kind of interested, what can I find on the internet? Are there cool phishing kits? Where's all the malware coming from? I want to start to get an understanding of what's out there. We can start with something like this. And one of the things we can do with that certificate data, we can always pivot off of that. But the other thing we can do is we can actually use that to kind of do a negative filtering on my results. So in this case, what I can do now is I can find, you can pick your brand of choice when you're doing this, use their favicon as part of the search. And then as we're going through, once we find, one of the legitimate sites that's actually using a favicon, if we come down to the certificate data, and what I can do is, where is it in here? If I keep going down a little more, there it is. So I can take something like the organization name on the certificate for a site. Maybe this is something we'd want to pivot off of a lot of times, but in this case, I want to say anything that doesn't equal this. So I want to use kind of the legitimate cert information to just remove anything from my results. So again, if you like looking for these things across the internet, really easy way to start doing this is, pick your favorite site, pick your favorite brand, pivot off of their favicon, and then just start to use a quick filter to say, let's take out anything that's legitimate. And it usually turns up some pretty interesting sites that we can start to look through. So we found a couple of sites. We found one other domain that's a similar style phishing page. One of the things that we found as we were looking into this more, I'm gonna just pull this up. So we pulled down their actual HTML. We wanted to see, sometimes there's comments left behind that have some good information in there. In this case, though, we actually found if you click on view shipping history, someone left a link behind that we don't think they meant to leave behind. This ADM upsserve-vn.top. So this was actually a pretty interesting one because we knew there was a couple of sites. We figured there's probably more than just the two that was turning up. So in this case, if I can do pretty much the same thing, I want to do this a little bit different though. We can always run a live scan in Silent Push. So if I want to go out and actually just run a scan of a site and kick off kind of my hunting that way, I can come in, I can take my URL, I can drop it in there, and we'll actually just go out and scan it, and all those attributes that we see from a site, we'll bring all that back, and we can start to follow the similar kind of hunting that we have. In this case, though, we're blocked by Cloudflare. Great. We come into our advanced scan now. We have a lot of different parameters that we can start to work off of. In this case, I want to change the location of my my scanning, because one of the things we noticed, the default language or the default location was set to Indonesia. So I want to change my location. I want to come out of some of our scanners we have in Asia. I want to look like a desktop. I want to be Windows, Chrome. We'll leave those kind of default. And now if I rerun my scan, the really interesting thing when we start doing our scanning this way, we can start to find if sites that are geo-blocking, if they're targeting a certain region, different ways we can start to kind of control a lot of these parameters. And in this case, when I scan from a different region, we're actually taken to a login page, which is really quite helpful for us because now I can follow a lot of these same steps that I took before. In this case, this looks like a pretty common login page. So we have this SHV, which is a really good pivot off of this that we can use. I can start to use that, and I can say, show me any other pages that we have that have that same bundle of JavaScript. Interestingly enough, in this case, it's actually only one unique JavaScript file, but again, we can start to see there's a number of different domains out there, same title, same favicons, the content on the page, generally the same across all of these. So as we kind of started to spider out a little bit more here, we started to see kind of more of these domains that are associated with some of these kits. The other thing we can do, we can use kind of the same trick that we had where instead of looking at just this small pattern, what I can also do now is because I have this new domain, I can do something like observe. I want to find any domain that starts with observe dash. Same kind of idea. In this case, now we actually find a handful of domains that actually match the same kind of pattern across a number of TLDs here. So we started out with just one domain, found maybe another one that's related to it. We start digging in a little more. We can start to find some more infrastructure that's associated with this. And, the fun thing was, as we were going through this, we also started to see this. It's just one JavaScript file on here. So that's easy. I can look through that. And that's what we did. So as we were going through, we want to open this one up. And this one, I'm going to just ruin the fun a little bit here because this was a big, ugly file to start unpacking. But as we go through, one of the things that we found was a domain that was called logistics-api.com. Very cool. So we have these couple of UPS domains. We found this link that was left in for this login page. We really started to find kind of more of this infrastructure here, more of these domains that were associated with all of this. And then the last thing we really started to do also was, I can also just search and say, I want to take something like this JavaScript file. What I really want to do to kind of round this all out is I want to know, we have a couple of these sites, these phishing sites. We have this kind of login page where we have a link to it. What I want to know is, since there is only just one file here, I want to run one last search. I want to start to look across just some of these resources as we're going out and doing this scanning. And I just want to use the hash of this one JavaScript file on the page, really just to kind of finish out some of my pivoting. We have some of these domains that we found. We have some of these, some of these items, but where else can we find, this login page that we've seen? Because probably going to give me some other things that I can use to start to do some of my investigation. The cool thing is anything in blue is something that you can pivot off of. So if we do see maybe a domain in here as we're going through, if I want to pivot off of this and start to dig in again and see, what else do we have for DNS records, the web scanner content, really gives us a lot of ways. Whereas I am, starting to find some of these different domains, this is where you can start to do some of this pivoting and start to find some of this additional content. That's all I had. Feel free to reach out at any time. If you do have questions, if you're in the community, if you just see something in there, query, some data, you want to chat about it, feel free to reach out at any time. Happy to jump on, happy to chat about anything. And, we try to do these every 3 weeks. So if you have ideas, things you want to see in these, always open to different ideas, but hopefully see you all next week. So thank you everyone for coming. Always fun to do these, and see you all in a couple weeks. So thank you.